Hi, it's Lauren and welcome back to the Whimsy Stamps YouTube channel. Today I am sharing with you how you can create a very simple scene using different die sets from Whimsy Stamps. We are going to start by making our cloudy sky background, and for this I have cut a piece of watercolor paper to fit a slimline card. It's a little bit larger so we can trim it down, and I have die cut one of my cloud edger dies on some extra scrap paper, and I am using that as a stencil to create clouds for my background. I created my top layer of clouds with a dark blue heavy hand of ink to create my sky. And now for my second layer of clouds, I'm going a little bit lighter to kind of create an illusion that there are clouds in front of each other. And I also alternated where I laid down my stencil, so that way my clouds don't look exactly the same. They look a little more random. And once I was done with that, I cleaned off my workstation, and now we're going to work on creating some water. I used the wavy die from the Stitch Border Die Trio on some blue cardstock, and now I am trimming it to fit in that bottom right hand corner of my background. I am using some Distress Oxide in Salty Ocean to add some more depth and color. I like distressing on top of colored paper because I don't have to use that much ink, and I'm using it just to create shadow and depth. And now I'm using some splatter ink and creating some texture and interest to my water, as well as using my distress sprayer just to give my water a look of that it's like bubbly and oceany, if that makes sense. You don't need to use splatter tools. You could definitely use watercolors. You can use ink and a wet paintbrush. There's lots of ways you can create this splatter look. For the grassy part of my scene, I used some green cardstock and the hill-shaped grass edger die and cut out another piece and trimmed it to fit in the lower left-hand corner, this time using Lucky Clover to add that depth as I distress on this piece, and also adding some splatter ink onto this to kind of match my ocean and give a little more consistency to my scene. So now you can see, just using some simple dies, I've created a sky background, some grass, and water. Now I wanted to add some trees, so I'm using my Forest Majesty set, and I die cut some of those trees out of Kraft cardstock. I die cut a cloud from the Up in the Clouds die set out of some green cardstock to create my treetop, and distressed it with pine needles, so there's a little bit of a difference between the leaves and the grass on my paper, even though I use the same color cardstock. Now on my tree trunks, I'm going to use some vintage photo and distress in different random spots because these are more delicate pieces. I just added a little bit of distress to them to give them some texture and interest and to match what I have on the rest of my card. So now I'm going to trim my sky piece down to fit onto my slimline card, and I'm trimming it down to 8¼ by 3¼ so I have a bit of a border when I put it onto my card base. And I'm layering my water and grass to determine if I need to trim these pieces down as well. Now if I didn't have the trees, I think this would be perfect. It's a nice scene, plenty of room to put critters or whatever you want to put into the scene. But I didn't like how there wasn't a lot of room for my trees. So I'm going to trim off 1/4 inch from these two pieces just so I have a little more space in my sky and my trees don't feel so squished onto my card. So now I'm going to bring out my wet glue, and I'm going to glue my water piece first, and then I am going to glue on my tree branches behind my grass. So I'm adding some glue to the back of these, and then I'm going to layer it onto my card background piece. And I want it to look like a forest because I'm going to be using the Oh Damn set with those cute little beavers. So I want it to look like there was a nice forest sitting here by the edge of the river. So I'm going to crowd those pieces together to make it look a lot more full of trees. And now I will glue on my grassy piece to layer on top of my water and my trees. And then I want to pop up my leaves of my trees. So I'm going to bring out some foam tape, trim off the excess of those tree trunks, and then layer a piece of that foam tape where I want my tree top to be. Peel off that release paper, place down that green piece, and then trim off the excess. And now it looks like a bunch of trees. Now I'm going to adhere this to my card base. I've cut a piece of Kraft cardstock so that way I have an 8½ by 3½ base. It's 8½ by 7, and the 7 side is scored at 3½. And now my scene is ready for some critters. So like I said, I used the new Oh Damn stamp set, and I have already stamped and colored and die cut with their matching dies, the tree trunk, a bush, and a couple of beavers, as well as one of those little tufts of grass. And I'm laying everything out to see how it all fits, and I think I'm just going to go with this one beaver. So I'm going to alternate between wet glue as well as some foam squares just to add a bit of dimension to my card. So I'm layering my log here, and I realized I probably should have done this before I glued it to the base, but that's okay. I'm going to bring in some small scissors and trim it down so it's flush with the edge of my background pieces, and then use some foam squares to pop up my little bush. I like, layering and giving everything a little bit of depth on my card. I'm gluing my grass tuft here, and then I will pop up my little beaver with his fish. And there we go, a nice easy scene. And I'm going to bring out my quick strips. I love this stamp set. It's so great. And I am going to use the sentiment "You're totally amazing" because I'm not sure if I'm going to use this as a birthday card or a thank you card. It's such a great sentiment that can be adapted really for any type of event. I'm using my VersaFine ink to stamp that right onto my card here, and now we have the final card. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial of how you can use your dies to create some scenes for your cards. I hope you'll join Whimsy over on all of our social media. We have our Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook group links down below. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and have a great day.